The story revolves around a retired UFC fighter who takes on a job as a bouncer at a bar in the Florida Keys. Hi, Studio Recap here. Today, we're going to talk about a movie called Roadhouse, released in 2024. It's an action thriller. The story begins one night when a woman named Frankie is looking for a man named Carter Ford. Carter participates in underground fights similar to UFC matches. He's willing to fight anyone, easily defeating his opponents, and it's safe to say no one dares to face him. That night, after Carter knocks out all his challengers, a man steps forward to fight him. Carter starts trash-talking, but as soon as he sees the man's face, he refuses to fight, leaves the arena, and forfeits all the money. That man is none other than Dalton, a legendary UFC fighter who, for some unknown reason, everyone seems to fear. After leaving the arena, Carter attacks Elwood with a knife. While Elwood is tending to his wound, Frankie approaches him. She owns a bar called Roadhouse in the Florida Keys and, due to nightly harassment from thugs, decides to hire a guard and bouncer. When she sees that even Carter is afraid of Elwood, she eventually offers him a job with a weekly salary of $5,000. Elwood refuses, but Frankie points out how beat up his car is and suggests he might want to reconsider. She writes her number on a piece of paper and leaves. After a collision with a train, Elwood's car gets completely wrecked. With no money left, he's forced to head to the Florida Keys. As soon as he arrives, he notices a bookstore owned by a warm and kind girl named Charlie. Elwood asks her for directions to the bar. Charlie helps him out, tells him a bit about the island, and even gives him a book. Her father comes out, welcomes Elwood to Glass Key, and doesn't charge him for the book. Elwood finds the bar and, upon entering, orders a coffee. The waiter immediately recognizes him and excitedly mentions being one of his fans. At that moment, several men storm into the bar, start breaking things, and harass the customers. Their leader is a man named Del. Elwood tries to handle the situation respectfully, but when he realizes they're looking for trouble and throwing insults, he takes them outside and fights them. On his own, he takes down all 5 men. Interestingly, after breaking their bones, he drives them to the hospital in Frankie's car. At the hospital, Elwood meets the head doctor, a woman named Ellie. Ellie thanks him for dealing with the troublemakers but adds, "You're someone who hurts people too." Elwood replies, "I get paid to do it." Ellie notices Elwood's bloodied shirt and cleans and bandages his wound. Even though he refuses stitches or any painkillers, Frankie pays Elwood his first week's salary in cash and thanks him. She talks about the name of her bar, explaining that it was inherited from her uncle. Frankie suggests that Elwood stay at the town's only hotel. During their conversation, Elwood realizes that the houseboat he had noticed earlier while exploring the island was also part of Frankie's inheritance from her uncle. He asks if he can stay there instead, and Frankie agrees but warns him to be careful because the area is dangerous. She mentions that there are alligators around, and one had even killed one of her staff members in the past. At night, Elwood usually has bad dreams on the houseboat. The next morning, he's woken up by the voice of Laura, a waitress from the bar, who's brought him breakfast. Laura tells him that many guards have come to the bar before, but none of them lasted long. She expresses hope that Elwood is different and that he can make things better. Elwood goes to the bookstore and asks to use the computer. Charlie sees him as a Western movie hero who's come to save the town. At that moment, the sound of an argument and bullying comes from the shop across the street. Charlie yells at the troublemakers to leave and says she hates those jerks. She explains that the bookstore was her late mother's idea, who passed away last year, and her father now has a second job to make ends meet. When Elwood returns to the bar, he realizes that everyone knows him now. A man named Ben Brandt, the leader of all the thugs and troublemakers who've been harassing people, argues with his men, calling them cowards and useless for failing to take down just one bouncer. He then orders them to do whatever it takes to scare Elwood and run him off. Elwood starts teaching the bar's waitstaff how to defend themselves during an attack and how to handle troublemakers who come in looking for a fight. Elwood also goes after a young salesman who had been involved in a previous fight with the thugs. The guy's a boxer, and Elwood, like with the others, teaches him a lot. He ends up working at the bar as well. Together, they manage to control most of the fights that break out. When Elwood takes a very drunk customer outside the bar, he spots Del and his crew, realizing this is a serious threat. Later that night, as Elwood heads toward the houseboat, the thugs run him off the road, and he ends up in the water. He quickly goes after them, and when Del tries to kill him, they fight. Elwood knocks Del out and throws him into the water. As Del tries to climb out, he's attacked by alligators, and his blood spreads across the water. Elwood realizes that most people in the area are involved in drug dealing, and he wants to find out where these drugs are being traded. Two of Brant's men come after Elwood, telling him that their boss wants to talk to him. Elwood refuses to get in the car, knocks both of them out, and says, "Tell your boss that if he wants something, he can find me at the bar every night." Elwood is curious why Brant is so focused on the bar, so he asks Frankie about it. However, she doesn't know the answer and just wants to protect the legacy her uncle worked so hard to build. Brant's father is a major criminal who's currently in prison. When he calls his son and Brant ignores the call, he contacts a thug named Knox. He tells Knox, "My son is causing trouble. Go and clean up this mess on my behalf." Knox is a ruthless enforcer with a lot of strength and power, known for his violence and intimidation. Ellie borrows a boat from her ex-boyfriend, who's a cop, and goes to see Elwood. They go for a boat ride, then stop at a spot where they share drinks and talk about Brant, and Elwood learns a lot from their conversation. Ellie expresses her interest in being with him, but Elwood says, "You don't know me." Knox goes after Brant, beats up his men, and takes over their place. When Brant arrives, Knox tells him that he's got a message from his father. Essentially, because Brant messed up, his father has called in a favor. Knox is determined to kill Elwood and finish the job. The police come after Elwood and question him about Del's death. They take him to a man named Big Dig, the sheriff of the entire county. Big Dig threatens Elwood and demands that he leave Glaskey immediately, or things will get worse for him. When Elwood argues with him, Big Dig throws him out of the car and tries to kill him. Just then, Ellie shows up and slaps the sheriff across the face. Elwood realizes that the man is Ellie's father, and he's working with criminals. In the past, he had worked with Brant's father, and after Brant ended up in prison, he started collaborating directly with Brant himself. Brant comes to the bar to confront Elwood and tells him, "Why is a stranger like you here? My father served this place, and I belong here." Brant then shows Elwood a film and says, "I never understood why you kept beating your friend after you won the fight and even killed him." He tells Elwood to end it all and leave town. After Brant leaves, Knox and his men storm the bar. They wreck everything, breaking the windows and beating up everyone they can. Knox even harasses the singer and the band that are performing. Once they've caused chaos and destroyed everything, they head straight for Elwood. Elwood and Knox engage in a brutal fight, exchanging heavy blows. Although Elwood fights back, he's outmatched and ends up taking more punishment. Knox throws him out of the bar. Elwood decides to leave, but Frankie tries to stop him. He tells her the truth, that the entire highway belongs to Brant except for the bar, and Brant is after him to take him down. Brant's men are severely beaten and arrested by the police. As Elwood leaves the area, he notices that the bookstore has been destroyed. This was Brant's doing. Elwood decides not to leave and goes to find them. He kills one of Brant's men and puts the body in the car. Elwood learns that there's a meeting in Harvest Key where they plan to borrow money from someone. The next morning, Elwood heads to Harvest Key. He takes down a police officer who's moving the body and uses the officer's gun to shoot the dead body. He then calls the police from a public phone to report the incident. Elwood is extremely angry, but once he's angry, he doesn't back down. Big Dig comes to see Elwood and tells him that Brant has taken Ellie hostage and will kill her if the money isn't returned by noon. He takes Ellie's ex-boyfriend's boat and a bag full of bombs to confront Brant. When Elwood reaches Brant's boat, He realizes that Big Dig and Brant are still working together. Meanwhile, Big Dig also discovers that Brant has outsmarted him and truly has Ellie hostage. Knox is also on his way to the boat. Elwood detonates the bomb and goes after Ellie. He eventually finds her, but as they exit the room, someone shoots at them. Ellie makes it to the boat, but Brant gets on the boat and takes her with him. Elwood and Knox fight again, and Elwood eventually throws Knox off the boat, but Knox grabs the rope underneath and follows him. Eventually, both boats collide. Elwood and Ellie manage to escape from the boat as Brant crashes his into a rock and is thrown toward the island. Knox reaches them and fights with Elwood again. This leads to exciting action scenes as they fiercely battle. Brant asks Knox to kill Elwood, but after killing Brant, Knox goes after Elwood again. Elwood is wounded by a knife strike from Knox, but in the final moments, when Elwood is on the brink of defeat, he manages to kill Knox. At the end of the story, Ellie's father asks Elwood to leave for good so that he doesn't get caught, and Ellie agrees that it's the best decision. Elwood leaves all the money he has at the bookstore for Charlie and her father and leaves the place for good.